G'day guys, today we're going to go through a two-part series on some tech data and how it can really improve your fishing sessions. We're going to go over the basics, just looking at how we can find this information and also how to read it and really improve your fishing and take it to the next level. Alright, so in part one we're going to have a look at barometric pressure. Now we've probably all heard of the saying 10-20 fish are plenty, but we can go a little bit more into this and see how it affects the fish's feeding habits. So what it all really comes down to is the fish's bladder. If there's a higher barometer reading, it's going to put more pressure on that fish's bladder and it contracts it, leaving more room in the stomach, which in turn makes the fish feed more actively. And on the other end of that, if we have a low barometer reading, there's going to be less pressure on that bladder, which makes it expand, pushing more pressure onto the stomach, and that leaves the fish feeling bloated and uncomfortable. What they'll quite often do, if they're feeling uncomfortable like that, they'll go deeper down the water column just to try and get a bit of relief from that. Now, like the saying goes, 10-20 is a great reading on the barometer. It does get higher than that, but it also gets a lot lower too, unfortunately. What I'm really looking for ideally is a few days around that 10-20 mark, and then a day where it's going to drop quite significantly, so maybe around to that 10-10 or 10-15, and the fish will actually sense that drop and they'll feed extremely hard before that drop occurs. So that's one day to really look out for. So if you're looking at the forecast, keep an eye out for that, because that's a great time to get out there and chase them. Alright, so how do we go about finding this information? Well, luckily it's pretty easy, guys. All we got to do is jump over to Google, type in your location, then barometer forecast, and you'll get a few come up there. I usually pick the tides for fishing one. Once I've clicked into that, I can see an outlook for 7 days, and even on each particular day, you can go through hour by hour what the barometer is forecast to be reading at. So that's very handy. They won't usually change too much on a particular day, but if you have a look over 7 days, you can see a fair few changes. Alright guys, well that's just about it for the barometer part. Just remember, a high barometer reading will generally mean a lot better fishing, and if it's around that 10-10 mark or lower, it's probably going to be a lot slower. So try and pick your days if you can, and you'll probably find your fishing sessions will be a lot more productive. Alright, so part two, we're going to be looking at bite times. These are great. I find them quite accurate. And basically, in any given day, you generally get 4 bite times, and 2 of those are going to be major and 2 of those are going to be minor. So the major ones are obviously better. We won't get too technical or anything like that, just sort of show you what we need to know for the fishing part. But basically, those major bite times are when the moon's either directly above you, which is called a zenith, or directly below you, basically below the Earth's surface where you're standing. So those are the 2 best times to fish during the day, and the minor bite times are just when the moon rises and when the moon sets, and these are amplified depending on the time of the day as well. So for instance, if you've got a good bite time on either a sunset or a sunrise, that really amplifies the bite period. So it's going to be a lot better. A lot of people swear by this. I know a lot of guys up north of the Barra really swear by it as well. I found it very useful, and quite often I'll look back and see what sort of time I was catching all the fish, and they're generally around those bite periods. So we'll just go through how to look at this information now, guys. I've downloaded an app called Fishing and Bite Times, but there's plenty of other ones on the App Store as well. Most of them are free. I paid an extra couple of dollars so that I could look further in advance on the dates. You don't have to. If you just want the free version, that's fine. And we're just looking at a screen here where it's quite a good bite time, so up above that 90%, and you can see there we've got 2 major bite times and 2 minor bite times, and those coincide with the rising and the setting of the moon, and then also the zenith, and then when the moon's directly below our feet. And then the other thing we can look for as well is, I love it when I get a low bite time day and then the next day it jumps up quite sharply. So I find those fishing times to be very good as well. So as you can see here, we've got quite a low bite time, and then the next day it jumps up quite a fair bit. So that increase can definitely spur the fish on, and I've done well on days like those as well. What I don't particularly like, which seems contradicting, but on days where it's above 90%, if you get a couple of those in a row, I find the end couple don't fish as well, because I feel like the fish are fed a lot heavier the day before. So I'm really trying to look for those big rises on either side of the low bite times. All right guys, well there's just a couple of extra things you can look at when you're planning a fishing session. It's not just all about the wind and the swell. You can look at those technical data as well, and they can definitely be useful. If you didn't understand everything, don't worry too much. Just Google search or find those apps, and just remember you're just looking for a barometer as high as possible. Around that 10-20 mark's great, and also those fishing bite times. Anything around that 80 to 90% mark, or even 70% if either side of that's got a bad bite time. And probably one thing I just would say to you is, if you are out fishing and say there's a major bite time around 10 AM, don't go changing spots around that bite time. Find your spot, set up and fish for that bite time, because you want to utilize that. You don't want to sort of be motoring around when the fishing's at its best. So hopefully they're handy tips for you guys. I think they'll be quite useful for you if you really look at them. And yeah, good luck.